first question, because you've worked with a couple of the major animation studios at this point, what do you think a shared quality they have that allows you to deliver your best work? But then also I want something specific to DreamWorks that you really appreciate.
Well, we were just at the Annecy Film Festival, which is an animation festival in France. And it is an incredible experience to see the amount of students worldwide in animation. And so, any studio right now around the world, there's so much talent. There's so much energy and there's so much imagination that these young boys are bringing into animation, which is just exciting to be around. So I think that everyone's sharing in that. We're all sharing the boon of how much people love animation and how much great education there is in students. But for DreamWorks, I find one thing really particularly wonderful in working on this film was our design department, Pierre-Olivier, Vincent, our production designer who did all the How to Train Your Dragons. The way that DreamWorks can render and bend believability and build worlds and the effects, that I think is really, the team that I've worked with are that's Dave Wolver, Pierre-Olivier Vincent, Carlos Portolas, that ability, like I say, to bend believability and also to give that level of sophistication, but at the same time, super appealing.
Makes this movie from a 4-year-old niece and for me also. Speaking of how much talent there is in the animation sphere right now, I wanted to ask you about the choice to or to not have a co-director, because you've worked both ways.
Yeah.
So what signals to you that a story, a production requires a co-director? And then ultimately, why was Faryn the perfect pick for that role?
Yeah, no, well, I was very lucky because when I came onto the movie, Faryn was already the head of story. And I'm a writer by birth trade, I guess. And she's a story artist. And so she brings a completely different set of tools that helps us crack a story. And along with my producer, Kelly Cooney, it made perfect sense to elevate her to a co-director because she had a real connection to Ruby, number one, which is the most important thing, the emotional connection to your characters, but then also an incredible sense of humor. And there are things that people who came up through story look at things differently when you're trying to solve, because our day is just solving problems, especially with an original film. An original film is wonderful because the world is wide open, but it's also hard because everything's wide open. So there's a lot of lanes you can go down and you want to try them. We all want to try everything because we're all creative, but we have to make choices. So it's really nice to have somebody that compliments you. And also, in this one, having, a female director that could bring, this was the story we were telling, bring her experience to the movie.
Now, the perfect follow-up to that, because there's a quote from her about you in our production notes that I love. She was talking about how your directing style is open and collaborative, yet declarative. When a hard decision had to be made, he knew exactly what to do. Can you give me an example of one of those hard decisions and then how you went about, overcoming that challenge and executing the decision you made?
Oh, that's really nice. Thank you, Faryn. But I really, one thing is that I always try to come knowing that multiple imaginations working on a movie gives it more breadth of appeal. And the question really is that there's always a better idea. You can always beat the idea, but there's times where we need to, for the longer arc of the movie or the longer sequences, that it's things that happen that you have to just say, that would be really cool, but that's going to send that part too far. And it's really just keeping the spine intact and letting the artist, iterate and, improv. It's an improv, but we have to, if we enter a scene one way, we have to get out the other. What happens during it is where all the magic happens, where the fun happens. But I think that's what it is. It's trying to keep that spine.
What do you think is the biggest difference between the story and how you envision the film turning out day one when you first signed on compared to what we see now in the final film?
Oh, honestly, I could never have imagined, and I don't even know if they could have imagined the level of visual, splendor in the water treatment and the underwater world. Every time we asked them, and a lot came from their story because she's a Kraken, and a Kraken usually ends stories. They are the most powerful creatures on the planet in every mythology we've ever read. So we had to keep upping the challenges for Ruby during the course of the film. And the entire second act, when we would be like, well, she would just get this, it was hidden behind a wall. We're like, wow, that wouldn't do anything. She's a Kraken. So building these challenges took all of the departments to come together and really work in a room, try to figure out what we could do production-wise, but what was best for the story and most challenging for our lead.
Was the choice to have your mermaid's hair red deliberate?
Well, that was, I think, that sort of story was playing very much into the teen comedy of the movie, which was the new girl, the mean girls of the sea, the Regina George had to have been that girl. Okay. And it just worked so fast when she turns her head around and she's the new girl in, and that's the one that becomes most popular in an instant.
I mean, it happens to align with something else.
Yes, sure.
I was amused by that. I have one other Faryn quote that I wanted to ask you about, because she also said you have a wealth of knowledge and references in terms of movies. So now I absolutely must know, what is the movie you know top to bottom, the one you quote the most?
Oh, wow. I can do, which I probably won't, but when I started Croods at DreamWorks, I was running with John Cleese. So I can do a lot of Monty Python, which I won't do right now, but I wrote 2 scripts with John and I can do a lot of Monty Python.
Can I get your favorite line?
I don't even know. I'm not sure if it's even PC. I don't even know. I have to be careful.
Collider has older viewers.
Okay, well then bring out I could do some French taunter, but I do accent. So no, I'll leave that up to, they also have access to the internet so that they can look up the best clips.
Okay, fair enough. So we were talking about my niece earlier. And she's first discovering movies now. And it just, the thought that she could see anything at this point that she can look back on and think to herself, like that was the first time I was totally enveloped by movie magic, to the point that it made me believe something out of this world was actually real. It's just like such a special thing. So what was that movie for you? The first time that you really recognized the power that movie magic and big screen storytelling could have?
Well, I'm a Star Wars kid and an ET kid, so I'm right in that area of where it was. And I think that the Star Wars one, ET was probably the most surprising in the sense that we didn't know a lot about movies walking in. It's like, so we were kids, we walked in, we saw the movie. I went I think because I liked a girl in the class or whatever it was, and we went and I remember just being so touched by it, that story. And then in Star Wars, I think it was the fact that I play acted in my mind after, that was what really took me. It took me so far that the experience, lasted. Well, multiple times we saw it at the same time. But yeah, so those were the 2 big ones.
Star Wars is a good one. Your Star Wars in that respect is my Jurassic Park.
Oh, yeah. All right.
Played in that world more hours than I can imagine.
Jurassic Park for me too. I remember exactly where I saw it in New York and Chelsea theaters. And I know exactly where I was, who I sat with. My friend was a second AD. I was a PA. I sat right there. I watched that movie. I know exactly where I was.